So hello, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm delighted to be with Rosewood Hotel Group today, one of the world's greatest hospitality companies, offering a very bespoke and personal approach to hospitality. It encompasses three brands: the ultra-luxury Rosewood Hotels Resorts in North America, Caribbean, Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. The contemporary deluxe new world hotels and resorts in China and Southeast Asia. And the most recent COS, a dynamic global business lifestyle brand also being developed in China, but it's got global ambitions. The combined portfolio consists of more than 40 hotels in 19 countries. The group's expansion is distinguished by its approach to creating strong, modern, and differentiated brands. It has a razor-sharp focus on design and on innovation. I'm delighted to welcome today Radha Arora, President of Rosewood Hotels and Resorts. Radha, welcome. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Nice to see you. Been a long time, but it's very good to catch up and to be able to find out a little bit about everything that's been happening this year. But let's start with your career. I know a little bit about your career over the years, but can you give us a little bit of an update of how did you get to where you are today?
Well, it's funny you say that, and obviously you and I have known each other for a very long time. So every time when somebody asks me about my career, each time I speak to it, it takes me that much longer, which means that I'm really getting on. So yes, 40 years in, I was always fascinated by hotels as a child. My father was in the diplomatic service and we would travel a lot. In fact, so much so that we would actually, in between his postings, we would travel by ship. And so when we would travel to destinations like London, stop over to Moscow, we'd actually be living in London for 3 months, waiting for approval to arrive to Russia, for instance. So the sort of the travel bug has sort of been within right from the outset. In fact, I even learned to walk on a ship, and that's why some people say that's why I wobble a lot when I'm walking, and they know it's about when I'm drinking.
I like it. So you went to hotel school?
Yes. So, as I said, growing up, my father worked with the Foreign Diplomatic Service, and I was fortunate, as I said, to be able to have this allure of travel and some of these amazing iconic destinations and iconic hotels. So yes, I ended up going to Les Roches in Switzerland, in Bluche, in International School of Hotel Management. That's where I learned the sort of craft and the skills of the trade. And as soon as I left, I wanted to work in some of the most iconic destinations, and I had already earmarked at that age. I had no clue where my career was going to go, but I was just so fascinated by these iconic properties. So my first job, there are again 40 years in, there's a handful, but so there was my very first job, and I never speak to it because there's just so many properties that I worked at. Was at Royal Garden Hotel in Kensington for a few months, but I had my eye on at the end of the park, which was a Four Seasons.
Yeah.
So I joined them, and I was working night shift. I had just got married at that point as well, so it was rather odd set of circumstances personally. So then I shifted to the Savoy, and I'd already had that sort of on my radar. And of course, the Savoy management training schemes are sort of, it's what everybody always spoke of when they left hotel school. It's one thing going to hotel school and learning your craft, but it's going to these institutions. And when you learn so much about guest history, today we talk about customer relationship management and so on. There we had these index cards that we'd have to go through, one by one, and mark them to notice. So I found that all that so fascinating, and I think it's helped me where I am today, having gone through sort of those night manager roles at the Four Seasons, really learning the sort of art of understanding how operations really work at night,
Mhm.
because everything's dead. So you really can kind of, delve into so many things, and I've
Yeah.
been really excited about learning so much night audit, arrivals, and in all days, in those days, Concorde would be arriving at a certain hour, and people would check in for the one night from New York. Uh, and in those days too, the occupancies were always in and around between 90 to 100%. I mean, if we
Those are
weren't
the
full,
days.
night, if we weren't full on a given night, we had a lot to answer for the
Yeah.
next to the next.
Yeah.
So all the skills that you sort of acquire have sort of helped me along the way in this journey to where I am today. And of course, then of course I went back to Four Seasons after serving at the Ritz. Let's say serving at the Ritz, after being at the Ritz for 7 years as hotel manager, and that's where you and I met.
That's right. That's right.
And and again, I wanted to come back to Four Seasons, so I joined Four Seasons in Toronto. Left
The mothership, right? I guess.
the mothership. I did, yes,
Yeah.
yes, and it was nice to be able to go to the very heart of Four Seasons, and that's where the story began, and that's where the culture began. And again, I think looking back on several turning points in my career, that was certainly a turning point in taking a step backward, actually, to join Four Seasons, having refused certain amazing opportunities that were in London at that time.
Mhm.
And then, of course, finally, joining in sort of various roles as regional vice president, and the Cheng family, as you know, owned the Beverly Wilshire,
Right.
and they purchased Rosewood back in 2011. And so, yeah, just 9 years plus I've been with Rosewood.
Fantastic. And you're based in LA. You've been based in LA a long time now, right?
Yes, so yeah, I mean, LA has been my home since 2004 when I moved from Maui. And it's always where I wanted to be. I've been very fortunate. I remember coming to LA in the late 80s and walking around Rodeo Drive and standing outside the Beverly Wilshire. And of course, in those days, Pretty Woman was,
Yeah.
as a movie, was on everybody's mind. And it was
Fernando
you know,
Courtright still owned it, I guess.
what's that?
Fernando Courtright still owned the hotel in those days.
No, at that point, it was the Cheng family that had,
Already.
yeah, they'd already purchased it. And so I remember, oh yeah, no, sorry, another Courtright owned it back then. Yes, you're right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. And then I recall standing outside the Beverly Wilshire and looking at it and having watched the movie, but just the fact that it was Beverly Wilshire, not atypical to, all these other places that I've worked at, the Savoy or the Ritz.
Right.
And so it was another one of those on the bucket list, if you will,
Yes,
that I wanted
absolutely.
to work,
I can imagine it.
right?
Yeah.
And little did I know that I'd end up there. When I was in Hawaii, things worked out really well for me. Fortunately, things went well, and to the extent that the property was really successful, we grew the business tremendously within a 3 years span, and then the property was sold to Michael Dell just as I was leaving. And at that time, Izzy Sharp personally called me and asked me to be considered for 2 opportunities, and both were deemed, as probably the 2 best opportunities in North America for Four Seasons. One was Four Seasons New York, and one was the region Beverly Wilshire Four Seasons, as it was called those days. And again, so it all triggered the memory lane, and I found myself interviewing with both owners just to go along with the notion, but my heart was really set in LA, and I'm still here. So that's 17 years in. I moved to Dallas in 2011. When I say moved to Dallas, that's where the company was founded. Rosewood was founded by Caroline Rose in Dallas. And I remember seeing you at that point too, when I just joined the company, and we had these advisory boards and talking about Rosewood, what we would do with it at that point. Of course,
and we didn't believe you.
No, I know. I remember sitting in Bermuda at Tucker's Point.
That's right.
And rambling on about we got to do this with the brand, we got to find new opportunities, we got to, and I think everybody on the travel advisory board, they probably thought to myself, poor guy. Yes, we know he's passionate. Yes, we know what he's done over the past so many years in individual properties and overseeing regional properties for 4 seasons, but he's probably in over his head because Rosewood, this will take a long time because there's only a handful of hotels, and so so I'm of the belief that if I say something, I will always follow through on it,
Right.
and I give myself that sort of those triggers and those some milestones to say commit to this and somehow get to it,
Right.
as lofty as a goal as it may be.
So the one thing I remember about that, you had this idea of a hotel in Paris.
Yes.
And everybody said, Paris? What are you going to do in Paris? We're going to do this in Paris. Can't tell you what it is, but we're going to do this in Paris.
Yes. Yes.
Of course, today it's the Crillon.
I mean, again, the history there with me too. And when I talk about different institutions that I've worked in, Crillon was one of them. And I failed to mention it because it was in my student years I did my stage in Crillon. And in fact, as a child, I mentioned the travel bug, I actually lived at the Hotel de Crillon for a few months. So again, it was a personal objective to get the property in the portfolio somehow, and I traveled to Riyadh and back on a weekly or bi-weekly basis to implore upon the owner of Hotel de Crillon to let Rosewood operate and manage it on their behalf. And he had not heard of Rosewood other than the Al Fazaliya in those days at Riyadh, which then we do not run anymore, as you know. And it was incredulous because eventually I think I got to him. Well, I obviously got to him because we were able to, we were successful in consummating the agreement. So, it's been for us again, Hotel de Crillon. I mean, when you look at the location where it is,
amazing, fantastic.
The history, and a Palais Hotel, one would never get an opportunity like that again. And so, very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. The brand has just been acquired, and this opportunity was sort of percolating, and we went for it.
Yeah. So that sort of leads us on. I mean, the brand is now 40 years old, isn't it? Just on 40 years old since, as you say, Caroline created it in Dallas. And eventually you moved your offices from Dallas back to LA, didn't you? And you've had a very aggressive development plan since then. I understand you've got about 21 hotels in the pipeline at the moment in 16 different countries. This year's been an amazing year. You've announced Shanghai, Sardinia, Villa Magna in Madrid, a great buy, La Gualahani and St. Bart. I mean, it's been a great year already. You've been doing some wonderful things and some real trophy hotels. And you're adding residences in as well, aren't you, to many of these new properties?
Yeah, look, I mean, there are other operators that speak to residences, Peter. What we want to do is just like the brand from a hotel as a hospitality brand, and how it distinguishes itself from not just being a mere luxury hospitality brand that everybody speaks of. I mean, we do take the whole guiding philosophy of ours, a sense of place philosophy, if you will, and unearth it in every which way possible, be it from the design, the staff, the wardrobe for the staff, and the amenities. And we do a full-on market research and what will really stand out, make that destination stand out as the sense of place. And that we uphold this principle. So we felt that there is so much now, subtly, with this recognition of the brand and people are looking to Rosewood. Our clients are sort of have been asking as well, I want to live in a Rosewood. I love what you do. I love the fact that you have this sort of anticipatory, engaging, refined service. And I know that I will get that in one of my residences. Through COVID, we've also realized that people, they've been living in their homes for a while. They want to have, they want to be in a sort of safety net, if you will, safety environment where they know that they will be taken care of, be it, from a medical standpoint, be it from uh, uh, all the adventures, wherever we're going to be located. And again, we're still working on how we're developing and how we're going to advance forward. But certainly 50% of our portfolio moving forward has Rosewood residences.
Really?
And we don't want to create your just, very, very much like, on brand. We don't want to just create these cutter apartments that look the same. Off you go, they're sold. No, they have to be bespoke to you as a client that will receive the butler. All the amenities that you have in our properties, they'll be extended to you. And there's a beauty of that. People want that experience, and we also feel that people are staying longer, especially through more domestic travel, and who knows how long this is going to last. So they're thinking, well, yeah, I could stay in a hotel, but I wouldn't mind having a Rosewood residence either.
So will that be in resorts as well as city center properties?
Absolutely, and I think you know there's two schools of thought. People are moving away from cities and moving to sort of suburbs and more sort of remote destinations. So there's an opportunity there for us. And then at the same time, there is this thought that people will continue to stay within the cities and work virally and still have access to the restaurants, the lifestyle, and the culture and everything else. And where the residences will become more of a feature of their sort of viral offices and what we do today.
Right.
So it's that much more important to create something that is not just your living room, but also a place that you enjoy working in your working environment. So I think, both ends of the spectrum, as when it comes to Rosewood residences, will offer a great opportunity for our clients.
Fantastic. And so next year you've 3 openings planned. Is that where it is at the moment?
Yeah. So next year we start with Rosewood Luguanahani, St. Bart's. And Luguanahani, again, is one of those properties that has a following. Not a new build. It's one of those properties that, not unlike Rosewood Little Dix Bay, that's been followed by different generations. And St. Bart's is again sort of vying for an opportunity for Rosewood to. And the owner is an entrepreneur. Is a wonderful gentleman, David Bonneman, who actually, this is how Rosewood flourishes. It's not about going to those institutional companies and we just go out there, okay, let's go build 8, 9 hotels, let's go and manage them, let's create those relationships. No, we build kinships with individual entrepreneurs like David Bonneman or Rick Caruso and Rosewood Miramar, Prince Mette de Crillon, and some of those and Kona Village, of course, with Kennedy Wilson and Lorraine Powell Jobs. Some of these people are sort of, intertwined with each other and they know each other. And that word of mouth,
a great word, isn't it? That's such a great word.
Yeah, it's just because it's heartfelt, isn't it? It's not
absolutely.
We're not just saying relationship; it's actually heartfelt. And this is who we are. They see us. They see us for our passion. They see that we want to have fun, building their properties or augmenting their properties. So sorry, it's a long-winded answer. So I'm really excited about St. Bart's. And then post that, next would be Rosewood Sao Paulo.
Yeah. So that's a break into a new market completely for you, right?
Totally new market for us, our first foray in South America. And when I say new market, this opportunity we signed back in 2012. So it would have been 9 years in the making since the relationship was consummated. Now the project itself has been sort of, it's been a sort of a vision for the owner since before that. But it was after Rosewood Miramar, this Rosewood Sao Paulo was our second opportunity that we signed. Rosewood Miramar took 7 years. This one's taken 9 years, and which is incredible. So yes, the Sao Paulo is going to be absolutely gorgeous. It's Philippe Stark light. When I say Philippe Stark light, because we want to sort of Rosewoodize it. Some of the amazing features and local sensibilities and art. It's going to be ridden with art, and very true to sense of place. Brazil, Sao Paulo,
Yeah.
all of the above. And then post that, we open in Madrid, the Via Magna,
Yeah.
which again, you speak of institutional properties. Here's another one. So that one in particular, and again, when I always say, I use the word in particular, but all of these properties that we're working with have just been sensational and so befitting for the brand, when we
Yeah.
talk about sense of place. I think the owners realize that if they're going to partner with the brand and forge that sort of long-term relationship, kinship, then Rosewood is a sort of, the key holder for that.
So the bottom line is development takes a long time, doesn't it? With what you're trying to do, with the special properties you're trying to acquire, it's not short term. This is a long-term process.
Totally. Like I said, Sao Paulo, 9 years, and Creon was actually, when I look back on it, was only 5 years. Rosewood, the US Embassy in London, that conversation began, I'd say, 6 years ago. The deal was consummated 3 years ago, and we probably have another 4 years to run since till the opening of the property.
Right.
Yeah, so because these are not just your average turnkey opportunity. We see it for the long run for the brand, and the Cheng family have always seen this as a long-term business model for them because they
Isn't
love.
that key? The fact that it's a family business at the end of the day, isn't that key to that long-term initiative?
Totally, because Peter, what happens is we don't have all of these stakeholders resting on our shoulders,
Right.
kind of having to look back and give immediate results and immediate victories, because what that would have done would have diluted the brand. So we're very fortunate to have a family that's focused on creating something really distinctive. And the only way you're going to do that is when you so focus on the design, the local sensibilities, as I mentioned, and paying homage to sense of place, giving a nod to that, and at the same time thinking, okay, yes, it'll be a long-term commercial success, but purely because the families had the patience of being very deliberate and very thoughtful on what fits the jigsaw for Rosewood. It's not just going to be any property.
So let's move on. Let's talk about what's happening now. The pandemic hit us at the end of January, beginning of February. I guess in America and other parts of the world, you were facing it, I guess, at the beginning of the year in your Asian properties. How have you managed the company during the pandemic?
Well, I mean, look, there's no doubt that COVID has impacted every human being in some way, in some shape or form, right? And it'll continue to impact our industry for the longest term. From the travel behavior to the way the brand designs its properties and those on-site experiences. So privacy and security, have taken on a much stronger significance through this period, and I guess considering new factors that may never have prioritized, that they may not have ever prioritized before when planning their travel. So as a group, we began in very early, actually, back in January, because if you recall, China had already been hit with it. And the rest of the world didn't really wake up to it until, let's say, March.
Right.
And so by January, we were already getting some feedback from our existing properties. And of course, China's in a sort of backyard in Hong Kong. And so we started to, we were lucky under these sort of exceptional circumstances to acquire knowledge and experience on how to take care of the associates, what protocols should be, what measures should be taken place. In fact, we were already sending masks around the globe within our properties, and of course there was a shortage of them between January and March, if you recall.
Yeah.
But the family took it upon themselves to actually produce masks and send them around the globe. And so we were ahead of the curve from that standpoint. And so we started instituting those protocols, of which is a sort of a litany of them, very early on. And we started communicating with our owners really early, and we started educating our associates really early as well. So we've been fortunate, and I think as a result of that, that is the reason why perhaps we're 70% of the portfolio is already open.
Yes.
And it's open October 1.
Mm.
So it's as a result of those safeguard measures that we started to implement then. Yeah.
How do you determine when to open a hotel? I mean, obviously governments have a bit to play in it, but BVI isn't open, for instance, so you can't open Little Dick's. But how do you determine when to open? What's the formula?
Well, I mean, look, first of all, with these new programs in place, right, and we see what the WHO is saying, and of course what the local government and health authorities is suggesting. We kind of, we have our ears on the ground. One of the great things that the company did, and it's a sort of side topic, is that we did not furlough. And again, this is how the family thinks of it as long term. We did not furlough our team. We avoided as much as possible. We kept the executive committee on the ground, and then the general managers, they've been constantly sort of observing and talking to the local health officials and see when it's safe and not safe, and giving them reassurances on the protocols that we've been able to institute and have been successful in instituting. So that's that sort of given us some comfort level. We opened one property at a time, for instance, in North America. And of course, I've talked about the sort of successes, as I said, it's relative, isn't it? In North America, we opened Miramar back in May, and that was only 2 months into the pandemic, as we know. But we felt assured that the protocols that we were implementing will
and I've heard on the grapevine that Miramar's really paid off for you. It's doing very well.
It's doing really well. Yeah, it's absolutely exceptional. And there's this. It's for us. It's almost like an overnight sensation, because there was this pent-up demand in Southern California. People would, from certainly the drive market, and of course today, as we know, it is all about the drive market. It's all about accessibility.
Yeah.
And from Los Angeles to Santa Barbara is only an hour and a half. People would, generally when I, in my earlier days when I moved to LA, Santa Barbara, would go maybe once or twice because there was 1 or 2 properties, but mostly we favored going to Laguna Niguel because of the ocean and the access to the beach and all
South, not north.
South, not north. Yeah. So when this opportunity came about, and as I said, this was the first opportunity that we signed to have a rail line bifurcating the property. Who would have thought? In those days, again, back when we spoke, people probably thought that, I think Rosewood is desperate in trying to get a deal, and Miramar could be one of those desperate deals in the early days. And yet it's proven to be so successful. And in fact, so much so that the entire, whoever I speak to, I kid you not, and I have been going out to the restaurants. I've been obviously very careful, and I've been socially very connected these past few months as well, because all the sort of the entertainment business and all the who's who in LA are at home.
Yeah.
So barring none, they've all experienced Miramar because it's just around the corner, and it's just pent up demand. I get every day.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So this staying local, has improved spend, I guess. It's improved lengths of stay. Are you seeing that all around the world? Your local, as hotels open, do they all do as well? I mean, I know that one's done particularly well, but is this a general pattern that you can achieve good rate and good lengths of stay around the world?
Yeah, I mean, it
Market?
depends on the property. So if you
Yeah.
take a city hotel like Rosewood Hong Kong, which opened last year, as you know, with a huge fanfare, it's just a stunning hotel which just feels like home. It's just as soon as you walk in, the lobby space, we built it in a way that was so intimate. So you feel like you're arriving in your own living space as soon as you walk in. And that's what we do with all of our properties anyway. And so, we've done this. Uh, we've introduced these sort of opportunities for clients to avail themselves of staycations and
Mhm.
some marketing efforts from that standpoint. Uh, you know. Uh, Stay longer, those kind of things, and so basically people are availing themselves off of that. And so what we're seeing is that whereas people might only have gone for one night on a Friday night or a Saturday night, they'll actually go on a Thursday night and stay longer for 2 or 3 nights. And what that also does, Peter, is that they don't just go by themselves. They want to meet with their friends, people
Yes.
they have known for a long time,
Yeah.
obviously keeping socially distant, and their families. So they end up taking suites. And so what
Excellent.
is done for the average daily rate is just it's all of our properties that are open today. Uh, the average daily rate is it's unbelievable. I mean, it's
Good.
unprecedented figures. Obviously at the expense of occupancy because we have to be
Sure.
careful on how we manage our properties. So
Sure. Okay. So, Radha, your associates, you've got, I understand, about 10,000 associates around the globe working for you. As you said, you've tried to look after as many of them as you can during this time. But it's a big thing. One of the things I've heard a lot about is relationship hospitality.
mm,
And that's something apparently that as a company you're very keen on. I saw a quote from Sonia which said, "Relationship hospitality starts with the people we hire. Their eyes spark with passion while serving our guests and nurturing relationships."
mm,
Fantastic quote from your chief
mm.
executive. Um, how do you approach in this type of time now? How are you approaching the associates?
Yes, so to Sonia's quote and to just to kind of um, talk about the brand itself, and when I look at the success of Rosewood, the foundation of Rosewood, it's not just because of the founder, Caroline Rose Hunt, but also because it was founded and the first people that were part of the brand were really nice people from
Yeah,
Texas.
yeah,
And so what that did for us is that it created a segue, if you will, a momentum, traction for what Rosewood people. When people went to mention Turtle Creek, they said, "Wow, what lovely people!" And then Rosewood Crescent came along, where I lived for 3 years in
yeah.
between. And I thought to myself, it's just like Four Seasons, when Canadians, wonderful people, and that was sort of
Mm-hmm.
part of its success. And the same thing with Rosewood. And then came those Mexican properties like Las Ventanas. It was an overnight success, and as you know, it's still the gold standard of
Yeah,
all resorts. And that sort of pride and the passion which they deliver their service, and constantly coming up with new ideas because they're encouraged to do that. And we create this atmosphere that makes them flourish. And we create this atmosphere by giving them, you know, uh, basically asking them to liberate their personalities, and to unearth new ways of finding ways to kind of please the guests. And yes, they were wowed this time, but were they just wowed because they had a really nice, beautiful, seamless experience, or they actually went back and talked about it so much that they went
yeah.
to tell their friends about it? So as a brand, we've created that kind of an environment, and that for me is relationship hospitality. And of course, that culture now sort of transmitted itself, through our task forces, through Asia and now Europe and
Mm.
elsewhere too. And so through this pandemic, it was actually raised with this opportunity, not opportunity, but an initiative that was surfaced from one of the properties, uh, which was basically to try and take care of each other, the associates. They would pool in, and certain people were suffering, and the families were suffering. In fact, this was already going on before the pandemic, but it kind of and we call it the RAISE program. uh, it kind of morphed into a much bigger program where we said, okay, there might be issues, there might be challenges, many of the families, and in some areas where staff may have to be furloughed for a little while. How can we pull together all of us at the executive level, Sonia included, myself, and at the senior leadership level, and of course at every level in the corporate uh, hierarchy, but it was also at the field, where we kind of pulled together and contributed to these funds that not only take care of the associates in need, but also the local community where they are. So we did that, and it's, we've actually already released a huge amount of funds to take care of our associates. And again, it's a payback to them, and it's really sort of underlines what relationship hospitality really means. It says, okay, we talk about relationship hospitality. Now we are really, upholding and really, paying homage to the tagline, if you will, those guiding
Yeah.
principles of
Yeah.
relationship hospitality. And then beyond that, individually, the properties like such as in Montecito and Bangkok have both created Rosewood on the move food delivery services to offer complimentary meals to frontline workers and first responders, while Rosewood London, Hong Kong, and Abu Dhabi prepared meals for workers at their local hospitals.
Fantastic.
Um, so
Fantastic.
the entire community of our
Yeah.
associates have really sort of come together. And this is not just for now, this is here to stay.
Oh,
Uh,
good.
it's,
Okay. That actually was going to be my next question. Can you see this going on?
yeah, yes, I do. I see that, as I said, Rosewood is, we believe in our people, and they are really the pulse of who we are. And a lot of companies talk about their associates being the software, and the bricks and mortars being the hardware. But we really, really believe in our associates, and so much so that I, for one, when I travel through to different properties, I'm really stimulated by all those wonderful things that they do. So yes, we would do absolutely anything to take care of our associates, to
Fantastic.
who continue to hopefully not face so much more hardships down the road.
Good. Good. That's fantastic. Let's just move to sales and marketing. Do you get very involved in sales and marketing?
Peter, I get involved in everything.
Why did I ask that question? I know.
Well, I mean, so much so that you try and lend your strength in areas that you can. We have, as you know, a fantastic organization, and with sales and marketing too, we have a fantastic organization. Um, and I know I'm, perhaps a sort of a voice of experience, voice of rationale, and perhaps a voice of experience, voice of a traveler who knows different destinations, can understand what clients go where,
Mm.
and so and maybe sort of give advice on that front. Um, so yes, I do get involved with it.
Good. Good. Now, I think you've spent quite a lot of time this year investing in technology and websites, digital media, haven't you?
Yes, we
I
have.
think you've been spending some time during this slowdown to put
Yes,
some of that into
yes,
action.
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so back again, this is the beauty of this brand, and having a very enterprising CEO. Back 9 years ago, when the brand was, as I said, purchased, uh, we went through an entire brand revamp campaign to kind of change the face of the brand. aesthetically through the website, and of course, through our relationships with yourselves and the elite, and also, forging those relationships individually with those clients. So what we've done since then is that we felt that it was time again, uh, 7 years, 8 years, because we started 9 years ago. We completed the brand revamp campaign 7 years ago, and it was time again 7 years later to start again, to kind of, you've got to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
You've got to keep it very current. And given the fact that the brand sort of morphed into this bit of a phenomenon, we felt that how do we make sure that we remain current and appeal to the demographics that we are looking to stay in our properties. And so what you'll see is that there's some wonderful little video vignettes in there. It's much more seamless, and also it speaks to the destinations that much more, because I think that's what people are looking for, not just beds in bedrooms and bathrooms, which is given with Rosewood anyway. So that's one thing you can take for granted, but you see these destinations through our eyes. And
have you been able to combine that with CRM at the same time, or is that a separate project?
It is intertwined as well, because it's a very good question. CRM takes a lot of effort, and there's a lot of intricacies that are involved with CRM, making sure that every property is aligned with the way they insert guest experiences into the Opera, which is the software that we use, and how we then use that as a software that speaks to CRM, and then how we make sure that there's consistency across the globe, while at the same time allowing associates' personalities to shine through as well. So, and the clients, and so you can't just say, oh, client likes a glass of glass of white wine, or a bottle of white wine, and therefore gets a bottle of white wine somewhere else. So CRM is a very, very
that can be the kiss of death. That can be the kiss of death.
Yes, it can, because what we don't want to do is for CRM to kind of drive who we are. CRM is a platform, and that's what it is. It's a foundation.
That's right.
But everything else is through these relationships with the clients, and that is what we've also been working on in the meantime.
So nurturing high net worth consumers is an art of its own, right? And you've been involved in it all your life. If you think back to the Savoy with the cards, the Ritz, Four Seasons was always about that. What are the lessons you've learned about nurturing high net worth consumers?
Lessons that I've learned, Peter, I've been very fortunate as I've grown in my role to be able to travel, not at the same style as the high net worth individual, but being able to understand what they're looking for.
Sure.
And so over the years, having worked at such institutions that you just mentioned, you become paranoid. You become paranoid about wanting to perfect everything, because once you've built that relationship with a high net worth individual, which I do all the time, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm in Los Angeles right now. I took the opportunity. Look, it's not that I'm not busy. I'm busy, but I've also taken this opportunity to sort of connect socially with high net worth individuals who may or may not be Rosewood followers today.
Right.
So, and so once you do have their ear, once you know that they're going to stay at your property, and once you've committed yourself to say you are going to have an extraordinary experience, you create that sort of turbulence, if you will, those waves through the properties to say, okay, make sure you do this. Oh, come up with something creative. Okay, this is what he really likes, or this is what she really likes, and so let's make sure that this happens, and surprise them. And so, as I mentioned earlier, when I speak to the GMs and I want them to surprise our guests, the only way I'm going to get surprised is by if the client then follows up after they say, by the way, that was a really magical touch. I don't know how these guys did this. So you create that sort of sense of um, desire and sort of paranoia and passion for that is so fulfilling when you
Mhm.
actually have a victory at the end of the
Yeah,
day and the
yeah,
client is extraordinary sums of money and I'm going to talk about it. And believe me, and certainly, you know, right now, you know, being in LA for a while now, and Rosewood Miramar is just down the road. I get calls on a daily basis for people to want to go and stay there, but at the same time, they are constantly sending me a note back. And I, in fact, I'm surprised that I'm thinking, you have time to send me a note back to say that was an extraordinary stay. I mean, I've been booking celebrities, I've been booking who's who of the CEOs of some fantastic entertainment companies and talent agencies and so on. And that's because I've been able to forge that relationship
right.
through my years of experience and really understanding that, you know, one client at a time. You get
Yeah,
one bad experience and that goes through like
yeah,
wildfire. So
yeah.
you keep it protected and put a lid on it to make sure that, you know, it's just, it stays, that we stay focused on giving just not just great service, but memorable service.
So the entertainment industry, you're in the hub of it there. So obviously the entertainment industry is important there. But what about in India with Bollywood? Have you been involved there as well in getting some of the Bollywood stars to the hotels?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, again, I was born in India, so uh, you know, and I moved to, as I said before, I moved to Russia. We moved in different parts of the world, and ended up living in England for the best part of my life. Um, and it was not until maybe 20 years ago, and I didn't have any relationships in the sort of the Bollywood industry. It was not until 20 years ago when one of the mega stars uh, stayed with me at the Beverly Wilshire, and you know, somehow they knew that there was an Indian general manager, regional VP, because I had made some deliberate sales calls in Bombay with one very renowned travel agency. And I must have hit the mark because they stayed with us in LA. And as a result of that, and I'm going back to what I was saying, the relationships, that was just one celebrity at that point. And now, they come to my home, I go to their home, and
No,
it's become a network,
fantastic.
and as a result of that, one kinship.
Yeah, see, personal
Yeah,
relationships. It's all down to personal
Person-
relationships.
totally.
Yeah. So the other side of that, of course, is social media. Now, you're a believer in social media. You're dealing with people who may not want to be on social media.
Yeah, I look, you know, social media. I mean, if you channel it correctly and if you use the analytics correctly,
Mm.
you can play it to your advantage. But you have to be really careful and
Yeah,
thoughtful. And we're
yeah.
always looking at what our content looks like. And so much so, not that we want to put too many parameters around what goes out in social media, but we need to be really thoughtful and careful in how your brand is presented. So that's something else we're quite paranoid about, ensuring that the right signals are going out and
Mhm.
are appealing to the right demographics.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, I have an Instagram handle. I use it sometimes through the sort of pandemic. I've gone quiet a little bit because I don't think it was appropriate to kind of
No.
send Instagrams at the moment, unless of course, you know, we're announcing properties
Right.
and
Right. Um, there are lots of awards on the street. We look at Condé Nast Travel just came out with theirs. Travel and Leisure came out with theirs earlier. There's the Forbes 5-star awards. How important are all these awards? I've noticed that you do say in some of your materials how many of each one you get for the different hotels. Are these a driver? I mean, where do they fit into them, to everything?
I think it's how you manage your, you know, click-throughs on Google as well. And people, when they type in 5-star or they type in you know, Condé Nast TNL best hotel in this location. So yes, it is meaningful. It's meaningful to our clients, which means it's meaningful to us.
Right.
Uh, and yes, of course, you know, who doesn't like to be able to I'm not saying self-grandizing, to be able to say, okay, you know what, we must be all right because we get acknowledged by certain well-renowned publications and certain, certain uh, uh, sort of accolades like the Forbes five
Yes.
stars, five diamonds. They are important, and I think we also, something that's really important with Forbes is that we learn a lot from them too, because
Hmm.
they're able to bestow their experiences in their other properties and what makes other properties become five-star. What is it that the client is looking for? Of course, yes, there's a relationship part and there's sort of being intuitive, being engaging, and so forth. But there's also the part of making sure that certain aspects of service, those certain criteria, fundamental criteria, are met at that level.
Good. So you said you get involved in sales and marketing, but you've got so many balls in the air: owners, strategy, development, operations. How do you divide your time up?
So I don't, it's about life. It's not livelihood. It's about being passionate about something. So
Hmm.
it's like, if you go out to a restaurant for a meal, if you want to have a nice glass of wine, you enjoy it and you don't think of it like anything else. You don't think that you need sustenance at that time. You don't think you need to have a drink at that time. It's like, it's for me, working with Rosewood in the capacity that I'm in. It's not that I want to interfere with the other disciplines, but because people, as I said, we have a fantastic organization. They do a great job, and people are liberated to do what they do best. But where I can, I'll offer my experience, and when asked for it, because I think it's really important to allow people to be themselves. And if you hire them and hired correctly, then they're going to be successful. So how do I divide my time? I just see it as a thing. Oh, I want to do this. I need to do this. Just keeps me stimulated.
Right.
Uh,
But owners need quite a lot of attention, don't they? Not your owners, the property owners.
yes, they do. Especially, well, I mean, there isn't a special time. They always need careful handling, lots of communication
Yes.
with, and especially some of these, when you think about the portfolio has gone from 16 to 28 properties, and we say, there's not one owner that has 3 or 4 or 5 properties. These are all individual entrepreneurs, and since I have been involved with most of them from the outset, from negotiating the long-term contracts that we have, to consummating and basically punctuating their properties to make sure that they're successful. So I've got involved along the journey from the beginning. So yes, they you have to, you know, it's not just about forging that relationship and then that's it, tick the box and now you move on. It's constant. And when
Yeah.
I say constant, it's, you become a unit, you become a family.
Yeah.
And so just as, like, as you would reach out to your spouses and your brothers and your siblings and your sisters and your parents and your grandparents, that's what you would do with your owners as well. It's
Mm.
just part of what we do.
Back to Kingsman, right?
Yes, indeed.
So how often do you get back to India?
Um,
In normal times, I know it's difficult at the moment.
Yeah, look, when my mother passed away sadly last year, but until she was alive, 2019, I would be actually every time I was in Europe or I was in Hong Kong, I would
Go
go
that way.
check on her, and so I would actually be going maybe some 4 or 5 times a year,
Mhm.
um, and um, and yeah, it's been almost now. It'll be 2 years in January. This is the longest I've stayed away from
Wow.
India for
Wow.
forever.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, and of course my friends are there, as you know. We talked about
Yeah.
Bollywood and social circle in Bombay, and uh, but I'm also fortunate that many of those people that I know in India actually have homes in London as well.
Right. Right. Right.
So I
Get
get
to
to see.
London. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So give us a little bit of insider knowledge. What's your favorite restaurant in London?
Oh, and you're not suggesting I'm going to call out an Indian restaurant, because my friends world kind of.
No, no.
In London, there's always of course, if I was being loyal to my brand, I'd be saying the Holborn Dining Room in Rosewood,
Of course.
which of course is a
It's a
fantastic
great restaurant. I've eaten there several
destination.
times. It's very nice. However, when you're not there,
Best meat pies. Okay, if I've I'm a creature of old habits.
yes,
I do love going to Scots. It's
yeah,
one of my favorite. If not for anything else, may not be food. Yeah, food is pretty good. It's a good fish restaurant, as you know. But it's where you just bump into so many people that
yeah,
I've known for years,
yeah.
and so for me that's that experience. And now more than ever, I'm missing going there.
Yeah. And will we
Um,
find you in New York when you're not at the Carlisle?
New York, oh my God, there are so many institutions in New York. Let's see. There is. I like Le Bernardin. Of course,
Yes.
it's an old institution.
Yeah.
Um, and where else was it? There was another place that I was thinking of earlier. Uh, Someone says, "Oh yes, I love the old La Galou, which
Mhm.
which is sadly closed and then reopened
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
on the east side." So yeah, I like the sort of French brasseries in New
Right.
York.
And is it the same when you go to when you're in LA? What about LA?
So LA, there is a very small, intimate restaurant here called Le Petit Trois. And basically, it's like a larder in a kitchen, right? It's just a little counter. There's 10 spaces, bar stool. The chefs are just cooking that at the kitchen counter. And they've got a tiny little bar with a bottle of Ricard and rosé, very typical small bistro in Paris, and the food there is as good as any French restaurant that I've been to. It's local, it's sort of French chefs that actually has an array of restaurants. So Le Petit Trois, and the other one is Animal,
Mhm.
which is by the
Okay.
same
All
restaurant.
right. Finally, Delhi. Where do you go in Delhi?
Well, now I haven't been for
When
2 years almost, as I said, but I think Delhi, maybe this is too expected, but Bukhara,
really,
uh,
really?
yeah. Do you remember Bukhara?
Yes.
Yeah.
Been there
Why?
several.
Because it's classic,
Yes.
and when people talk about real, authentic Indian tandoori food,
Absolutely.
that would be the Bukhara, and it's been there for oh, 40 odd,
Yeah.
45, 50
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Amazing.
Right?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been just a great conversation. It's so good to catch up with you. Thank you very much indeed for giving us
Likewise.
so much of your time.
Thank you. It's been thoroughly enjoyable. Always good to talk to you.
Nice to see you, Radha. Thank you very much indeed. Bye bye.
Thank you.